So it's the 1980s and you're a designer working for Nike. Michael Jordan has just signed a once-in-a-lifetime deal and you've got merely days to come up with the Air Jordan brand. Having walked out the cinema after watching Air, the logo geek in me decided to research the story behind it, and I discovered its controversial past. And despite the published lawsuits around it, I found something else. A completely different source of inspiration. In fact, it could just be more than inspiration. It might be a direct copy. But is this just a case of great artists stealing, or is it a rip-off? No great brand gets as big as Nike without fighting their way to the top. The Jumpman emblem has become one of the most iconic labels in sports and popular culture. More than just a logo for a pair of basketball shoes, it has become an icon for a whole subculture, and Air Jordan alone is valued at over $3 billion. Nike announced that between 2020 and 2021, they sold more than $5 billion worth of Jordan shoes, which is the equivalent of Under Armour's entire annual revenue. But it's not all been plain sailing for the brand, and to fully understand this, we need to go back. As Nike aimed to build a name for itself in basketball, a number of athletes had already signed endorsement deals with the brand, but Nike was far behind all the other competitors and no big player really wanted to sign for them. Jordan's debut year in the NBA had ended and he had already established himself as a superstar. The signing of Michael Jordan to Nike, beating off Adidas and Converse in the process, was huge. The only way that they could pull this off was with a first of its kind endorsement deal. Jordan would get a percentage of every shoe sold and the shiny red car that they offered him. It was an all or nothing bet that changed everything. Along the same timeline as this deal, a special issue of Life magazine, to be released in time for the 1984 Summer Olympics, commissioned a young aspiring photographer named Jacobus Rentmeester to photograph Jordan. He asked Jordan to strike an unusual pose for a basketball player, one inspired by a ballet move called the grande jeté, in which a dancer leaps with legs extended, one foot forward and the other back. The resulting image was Michael Jordan wearing his Olympic jumpsuit and a pair of New Balance trainers soaring towards a rim. Nike would license this image for use and is believed to have paid around $15,000 for a 2-year period, a one-off deal rather than permission to make use of it as any other part of the brand. No fewer than 7 months later, however, Nike had a portrait taken of Jordan to use in advertising that was strikingly similar, and in 1987 Nike began using the silhouette of Michael Jordan outlined from this picture on all Jordan branded products. The design team in charge of creating the Jordan brand was led by Peter Moore. Peter Moore was an American designer, creative director at Nike and Adidas from the 70s to the late 90s. Moore is credited as the creator of the originally banned Air Jordan 1 silhouette. As a multidisciplinary designer, Peter Moore created logos including the original Air Jordan Ball and Wings logo and the Adidas Mountain logo also. It was said that Peter Moore came across the photo of Jordan in Life magazine and loved how it portrayed him. And since they couldn't use that image for the logo, they decided to recreate that moment on a studio set with Jordan wearing his Chicago Bulls colours. It was an image captured by Chuck Kern, a Nike photographer who had previously photographed Jordan for the company's marketing efforts. Kern captured a series of similar ballet moves, posing Jordan mid-air with a basketball, and it was that silhouette that they would outline and then use later on for the Jumpman logo. Michael would even cite the ballet movement himself, calling it his grande jeté. He said, "I wasn't even dunking on that one. Most people think I was. I just stood on the floor, jumped up, spread my legs, and they took the picture." The first shoe to carry the logo was the Air Jordan 3 in 1988. Originally, the brand was going to use the Jumpman logo for sports apparel or shoes only, but the emblem was such a success that it was impossible to imagine any piece of apparel without it. The problem, however, was it was very similar to that Life magazine image. The sheer scale and value of this brand makes it very enticing to someone to take them to court if they feel like they've not been correctly compensated, or is just plain greedy. Photographer Jacobus Rentmeester claims that his 1985 portrait of the legendary basketball player was the sole inspiration, and back in 2015 he sued the company in the Federal Court of Oregon for copyright infringement. According to the lawsuit, Mr. Rentmeester created the pose inspired by ballet. The pose, while conceived to make it appear that Jordan was in the process of a dunk, was not reflective of Jordan's natural jump or dunking style. Nike claimed that the Jumpman logo was an entirely original creation and not merely a duplicate of Rentmeester's photograph because it included the Nike swoosh and other graphic elements. I'm not quite sure how that helped, but they filed a dismissal request in court. The court ruled against Nike's dismissal request, allowing the case to move forward, and in 2018 Rentmeester took Nike to court. His testimony was backed by art historians and other experts, in addition to the Nike designer sketches and comments that referred to his shot. Nike provided proof that the logo had been revised and improved upon numerous times before arriving at its current form. The jury agreed with Nike, and after a 3-week trial decided that the Jumpman emblem did not violate Rentmeester's copyright. By this time, Moore was well out of the picture at Nike and cleared of any wrongdoing. So was the photograph inspired, or was it just a coincidence? Or was there another source of inspiration behind it? One that didn't infringe the photograph, but something else. In 1983, a little-known game designer named Randy Glover spent most of his time labouring over a platform game for the Atari. Earlier in the year, he approached a games company called Borderbund about publishing a game. Unsatisfied with their demands, he met with Automated Simulations, who were much more enthusiastic about the game and agreed to let Glover complete it himself. The company at the time was transitioning, releasing action games under the Epix label rather than strategic games, and the game would later then be released by Atari and titled Jumpman. The platform game centered around the protagonist, the Jumpman, who had to jump from platform to platform in order to free a princess from the clutches of a villainous gorilla. The game's Jumpman character looked like a stick figure with long skinny limbs and a small head, which has a very striking similarity to the Air Jordan emblem. The Jumpman game became a bestseller for Epix, selling around 40,000 copies on the Atari and the Commodore 64 up until 1987, reaching somewhere between number 3 and 6 on the then current Billboard Top 100 Games. Perhaps Peter Moore was a gamer who came across the hit? The original logo came out long before the Air Jordan logo was designed. I mean, it's literally called Jumpman. The thing is, I believe this isn't a mere coincidence. I mean, it's just too close to suggest otherwise. You see, every design is inspired by something, and nothing is truly original. So as long as you can make the idea yours, it's fair game, unless, of course, you're walking over someone's trademark. And in this case, it could suggest it's a little bit closer than maybe what's acceptable. But as I said, great artists steal. If you're into branding, logo design, you'll love this next video where we deep dive into why big companies rebrand.